One of the hardest things about organizing a conference is finding a good venue. And I wanted to give some credit to UCA board member Brandon Duke, who's right down here. He is here from St. Louis with his lovely wife, Melissa, and their son, Cole. And not only does, yes, this is from one of his short YouTube videos that you may have seen. He's also the golden voice of a lot of our short cartoon videos. And not only does Brandon Duke have the perfect cowboy name, but he is an incredibly helpful UCA board member. So the YouTube channel, that's basically Brandon. I already mentioned his golden voice. He's the guy that heroically edited my James White debate video in like 10 or 15 hours of straight work, which if you've ever edited a debate video, you know how hard that is. The flyers, he did those. Tech help at the conferences. So if you see this man, I'm probably leaving out 10 things that he does. Make sure you leave him with a handshake or a hug. But don't do those lame side hug things. Now, I didn't want to put their picture up and embarrass them, but I also want to call attention to Diane Mueller, the conference coordinator. Where is she? She has crutches. She broke her foot, and yet she has been wonderful in that job. And I also wanted to thank Laura Willenberg. Where is she? For coordinating the conference workshops. Thanks is also due to our several conference partners. So Allegiance to the King, where are you? I see John back there. How many people have attended an online fellowship done by Allegiance to the King? Raise your hand. Awesome, awesome. We have the Church of God General Conference, which we'll hear more about in a minute. Where's Joe Myers? There he is. Thank you. Living Hope International Ministries. Sean Finnegan, whose nickname will soon be the Beard. Spirit and Truth. Raise your hand. Yep. See John. You have to meet John Schoenheit if you've seen his many videos with the books in the background. He's just as interesting in person. We also have a silver level partner, Dr. Robert Kokonyesi, the Unitarian Torch. Hey, this man is an expert on early modern Eastern European Unitarian materials that he translates from the original languages. Make sure you talk to him. And we have 3 bronze partners. We didn't get the logo for one of them, so I apologize for that. But first we have Compass Christian Church there with the compass symbol, an amazing church plant in Louisville, Kentucky. And then we have Christian-Centered Counseling. I believe Seneca's here for that. And the one we don't have a logo for is New Covenant Press, which has a bunch of interesting books that they've published here. So make sure you stop by the tables outside these doors and talk to these amazing people and find out what they're up to. So I had the privilege recently of going to a Spirit and Truth conference. It was in Nashville, Tennessee, so I could not miss it. And by the way, I recommend it if you've never been to one. It's a lovely mix of people. They're doing all kinds of interesting, amazing stuff. You'll hear about them more in a coming session. And some interesting things happened there that reminded me once again that we Unitarian Christians are not very well networked together. So my church friend Amy was there. She's a school teacher, and she has this one male colleague that she teaches music with, okay? She's at the Spirit and Truth conference, and she happens to meet another conference attendee that she never met before who came from Virginia. She lives in Nashville area. Talking to the guy from Virginia, she finds out that her male colleague is a Unitarian and goes to a Unitarian church 10 minutes from her house. So to find that out about the Unitarian church 10 minutes from her house, she had to come to a Spirit and Truth conference. And this happens at the UCA as well. Another guy wandered into that conference and talked to a few people. I don't know why he was there, but he saw the sign. It said Spirit and Truth. He's like, well, yeah, that's the words Spirit and Truth are in the name of my church. What? He's a pastor of a Unitarian church in the Nashville area. Did I know about this? No. I've been living there since 2017. So, I mean, it wasn't in the directory. I just didn't know the right people. Maybe I don't meet enough people or something. But I'll tell you another example of this kind of thing happening. It's kind of a small world, and there's really no substitute for getting together in person with one another. So yeah, we're trying to help solve this problem with our directory of individuals and churches. And yet there are still lots and lots of individuals and churches that are not there, like the two I just mentioned. Recently, I added the church that I'm involved in planting in Middle Tennessee. By the way, if you're interested in moving to Middle Tennessee, talk to me. It literally took me 5 minutes to make this profile. And if you get confused, then there's really nice kind of little instructional help video that's been created under the help section of the website. So do that. And if you're blessed enough to have a church, make sure that church is there. Make sure other biblical Unitarian people that you know are on there. So what I want to do now is share some highlights from my point of view about what has happened since the last UCA conference in America. One amazing thing that happened was toward the end of last year, I think it was November, the UCA's Theophilus Press published this book, Dynamic Monarchianism, the Earliest Christology. And I think this book is really opening a lot of eyes to what early Christians thought about God and his Christ. To make a long story short, the evidence is scanty and it's difficult to interpret, but it looks like there were people who were now what we call Biblical Unitarians from the get-go. And we can find evidence of them specifically in the late 100s and the early 200s. Another thing that happened earlier this year was I debated a certain well-known internet person. I'm just curious, how many people have seen this debate? Wow. Did I do okay? I thought I did okay. Will Barlow told me, so I believed him. He knows how to judge these things. So that was really cool. And a number of brothers came down in support of me. It was an interesting room. We were like maybe 10% Unitarians and 90% come to see James White. True story, Kegan Chandler was there sitting on about the second row. And before the debate begins, he hears a guy say, "What's the deal with this Unitarian Universalist Dale Tuggy guy?" And Kegan, who's not one to let misunderstandings lie unconfronted, he jumped in and explained, no, he's not a Unitarian Universalist. He's a biblical Unitarian. So that was an interesting experience. And then Mark Cain in his wonderful UCA podcast, which is currently catching its breath, but is going to go on to do many other amazing things. He was there and interviewed us all the next morning after it. So you should hear that. Now, his last episode called Trinitarians Made Me Cry, and It's Not What You Think, an interview with Cassie Woodard. Where is she? Where's Cassie and Tim? They're back there. Make sure you say hi to them. Fantastic episode. It might make you cry. And it's typical of Mark's content in that it answers both the head and the heart. Going back to the head, I think it was April, we had this book released. I don't mean we, the UCA, I mean the movement had it. Dr. Dustin Smith published his book, Wisdom Christology in the Gospel of John. So, yeah. If they say, haven't you read John 1? You can say, haven't you read this book? And you can, it's just right there on Amazon. You can't miss it. All right, so this is a serious academic monograph that deals, yes, with John 1, but also with the rest of the book. And, what is really the Christology of this author? So we were excited to see that and to help promote it. Now, I didn't know he was going to be here when I picked this slide, but this is Rohan Holt, PhD student. In July of 2024, we had the first overseas UCA conference, and it was awesome. And, our board really can't take that much credit for it. It was really organized by a very hardworking committee of British people spearheaded by Josh and Daisy Jones, who you might have seen in the Facebook group. Daisy kind of has a big personality and posts a lot on there. Josh is a military guy who's very interesting. Not only did they feed us fish and chips and Indian food, they took us to the notorious speakers corner where people, it's like a free speech zone where hopefully you won't get knifed on a good day. And nobody got knifed, and we had lots of good conversations there. This is our friend Rohan Holt giving an excellent presentation, Why Biblical Unitarianism Matters, which you can see on the YouTube channel. And it was just great. The quality of the presentations was really high. We were especially pleased with the participation of British Christadelphian brothers and sisters, and most of the conference committee were some really amazing Christadelphians. This is a slide from Dan Weatherall's presentation. He's a Christadelphian and the host of the Bible Feed podcast. And we also had Tom Gaston, the author of that book I mentioned before. And there was another experience of people that lived next door and didn't know about each other that happened at this conference. So one of the conference partners was the Christadelphian church or ecclesia that meets in Dundee. And they had a table filled with evangelistic materials and booklets and pamphlets and things like this. And our friend Jeremy is behind there. And this young man, a British guy, comes up and is chatting with him. And yeah, we're the Dundee Christadelphians. We're doing this and that. Where are you from? Dundee. Okay. So he didn't know about these people in the same town, but he came to Windsor, not far from the castle, to the UCA conference and managed to meet them there. So again, this is partly why we do this. Much to our surprise, we had a young couple in New Zealand do all the hard work and organize a conference. And so we're going to next month, some of us, be in New Zealand, of all places, on the Northern Island. And, it may be that Sean Finnegan and Mark Cain and I are practically the only American accents that'll be there. It's going to be people from New Zealand and people who have come across the ocean from Australia. I mean, it looks close to us, but I don't think it's really all that close. They also don't like it when you confuse those. It's like Texas and Oklahoma. Like you don't want to confuse those. They're different. One's a lot bigger. The accents are similar, you have to admit. Sean Finnegan did a really interesting episode with the main organizer, Zach Mayo. So you can hear his lovely Kiwi accent there on that interview. So he and his wife were until recently, youth pastors at an evangelical church. And then, like so many people, they start studying these things, they start thinking for themselves, and dang it, now we're heretics. So naturally, they want to share the good news with everybody. So we're very, very excited about that. There are a good number of Unitarian Christians in Australia. I wouldn't be surprised if we got there someday, God willing. What's going to happen next? Well, God knows. We don't. But at the British conference, we were really surprised by a strong turnout of German-speaking people from Germany and Austria. And there is some talk that they might try to put something on in 2025. So that's a possibility. I imagine it would be bilingual if that did happen. Okay, another thing that I spent a lot of time on. First, let me say, don't judge a book by its cover. Okay? Not the greatest cover. So this is a 4-way debate book that I was invited to be in by my Trinitarian friend, Dr. Chad McIntosh, who lives in Ohio. And there had been another debate book about the Trinity, but it wasn't very well done. It said it had 2 sides, but there were 4 people in it. It didn't really have 2 sides. And of course, it didn't have a Unitarian in it. So I mean, this is really a God thing, in my opinion. That Trinitarian scholars actually want to debate our views at all is a big change, because what the mainstream has done for a long time is just sort of mumble some things about the annoying Jehovah's Witnesses that come to your door on Saturday morning. And in their mind, like, that's pretty much all the non-Trinitarians out there. Maybe a few modalists running around in Pentecostal circles. So, I think there's a change happening in the culture. James White, I offered to debate him like 7 years ago or something, but all of a sudden someone decided that it was worthwhile. So it's a very interesting debate book. It's not for everybody, but I want to tell you a little bit about the content of it because there's some interesting differences between the Trinitarians involved. So the most famous of the four authors is Dr. William Lane Craig, who I would say is the most famous Christian apologist in the world. He's all over YouTube. He's famous for whipping atheists in debates about the existence of God. As they would say in Rhode Island, he's wicked smart. I think he has 2 PhDs. But he also has this Trinity theory, which isn't very good. But anyway, in this book, he says, look, I've got a minimal biblical view of the Trinity, and it can be stated in 2 sentences. And the 2 sentences are, there's only one God, and there are 3 persons, each of whom is properly called God. Okay? So it's 2 sentences, but it's actually 4 claims, right? There's only one God, that's one claim. And then, now let's talk about the word God, shall we? Okay. So that word God properly applies to this someone, and to this someone, right? So it's really 4 claims. And he says that's all the doctrine of the Trinity is. Now, I think that to say that you have a doctrine of the Trinity that doesn't mention the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and doesn't even have the concept of a tripersonal God in it, is just nonsense. It's a silly non-starter of a definition. But the reason he carves this down, the doctrine of the Trinity, into this tiny little nubbin is because he thinks that is what can be defended from Scripture, right? So eternal generation, forget it. Subsistent relations, that's not in Scripture. Okay, but how about maybe this, right? There's only one God, and then we got this point about the word God and how many things it properly applies to. Okay, so that's one of my debate partners. 2 sentences, exactly 4 claims. He's minimized it to kind of ridiculous level. Okay, one of the other guys, Dr. William Hasker, also a very accomplished scholar, has written about all kinds of interesting things, especially open theism. Hasker has his own view about what the doctrine of the Trinity is, which he lays out in his opening chapter. And just to be a smart aleck, I counted up how many claims it was. 37. So 4 claims, 37 claims. Which one is it? There's kind of a big difference there, right? And it's not the more the merrier, because if this one's correct, then this one over here is incorrect. So I just want to share a few of the claims with you because they might surprise you. So 3 of the claims are that each person of the Trinity stands in a relation of perichoresis with each of the others. Perichoresis? Okay. The divine nature shares one improper part with each person. Okay, that's 3. What's an improper part? Go ask your local metaphysician. Okay, now we're up to 6 claims. The divine nature constitutes each person. Okay, it's up to 9 claims. What does constitute mean? Go ask your local metaphysician. I personally don't believe there is such a thing as constitution myself. Each person is a proper part of the one God, that is the Trinity. Proper part, okay. Now we're up to 12 claims. And the Trinity is like a single soul supporting 3 conscious lives. Like a single soul supporting 3 conscious lives. Okay, I really don't know what that means. But okay, so you're up to 13 of the 37 claims. How many of you would say you probably never heard any of those claims before? Right. Yeah, they're kind of claims only a philosopher could love. Here's the interesting thing. 99% of Trinitarians in the pew have never heard those claims either. Right? So on the one hand, to try to make it biblically defensible, they whittle it down to 2 sentences, which are 4 claims. On the other hand, to try to make it theologically defensible and somehow make sense and not be tritheism, we get 37 claims and 13 of them are just kind of out there, right? So That's messy. That's messy. And the third guy, I think he's really a Unitarian that believes in pre-existence and a personal Holy Spirit. I don't think he's really a Trinitarian because he doesn't believe in a triune God. But he doesn't agree. So that argument gets weird. Right. So the 37 claims, I mean, what does the person in the pew even think? I don't think there is one thing they think. If they have thought about it at all, they tend to bounce around back and forth between, it's like one guy with three personalities, or it's like three gods, or maybe the three of them make up a whole. So then the fourth one is God, the Trinity, with the persons being the parts. I saw a guy on Twitter recently say this. He said, I tried to teach my four-year-old that there are three persons within one God. And this is how she articulated it the following night. Quote, Jesus has three guys inside him. Yeah. When you try to figure it out, it doesn't go well. My favorite part of this book is my opening essay, which is based on 20 facts, really 20 different classes of facts, which confirm that the New Testament authors think the one God is the Father, not the Trinity, right? So it's not, here's my favorite verse, and they can just say, oh, you're misinterpreting that because you're a Unitarian. It's facts about history or what is and isn't in the New Testament. And when you look carefully at those facts, it's like looking at the evidence in a crime scene investigation. It all kind of points in one direction. And you get this really strong case that results. So they try to refute my case in the book. I don't think it goes very well. So it'll be an interesting book. It's not for everybody. When you get philosophers arguing, it gets technical really fast. But I think the more Bible-believing people look into this, the more Unitarian Christians we're going to have, because the facts kind of speak for themselves. And if the younger me, if the 18-year-old Dale Tuggy saw this book, okay, notorious heretic bad guy versus three good guys, they're going to cream him. Like, he's not going to have any good points. Like, I would be shocked, I think, because whenever now I open the New Testament, I see these facts that I can't unsee. So God willing, that'll have an effect, even despite the cover. Here's a better cover made by Kegan Chandler on the UCA board. So I've been blessed recently. My work situation has changed, and I've been able to have more time to write, which is a huge blessing. So I'm the king of unfinished writing projects. I have several unfinished book ideas. This one is a book of my unpublished essays. A lot of them are presentations I gave. A while ago, you all raised your hand if this was the first time you've ever been around other Unitarian Christians. The first time for me was in 2011. I went to a conference put on by Atlanta Bible College and Anthony Buzzard's Restoration Fellowship. And that was literally like the first time I ever shook hands with another Unitarian Christian. I didn't know they exist until I was like 30 years old anyway. And I was there to kind of check it out and make sure that it wasn't a cult, that they weren't going to sneak off and sacrifice a chicken in the back or something. You didn't have to kiss the ring of the leader or any weird culty stuff. And what I found was they were just a bunch of Christians with different views about things and disagreements about things. They were just people. Anyway, at that 2011 conference, I gave a talk called The Lost Early History of Unitarian Christian Theologies. So that's one of the presentations I've revised. Back then, I only covered 4 authors. Now I'm covering, I think it's 10 or something. So I've been grinding through material written in the 100s and the 200s recently. You'll hear some about that on Saturday. Another chapter is called How Trinity Theories Conflict with the Bible. And then there's Heretic, 4 Approaches to Dropping H-Bombs. Also, something that's very exciting to me is a book I've been invited to contribute a chapter to. Our board member Kegan Chandler and our friend Stephen Nemish are co-editing a book called A Man Who Heard from God, one of my favorite verses. And this is a group of new essays on the human Jesus from a diverse group of scholars. So some of the ones you may have know about other than me and Kegan and Stephen, James Tabor, Thomas Gaston, Andrew Perryman, Dustin Smith, Peter Nagel, Andrew Perry. That's most of them. So be on the lookout for that. I'll be working hard on that. Probably what I'll present in New Zealand will have something to do with the chapter that I'm writing for that. And also, I would be remiss if I did not mention The Cost of Truth, published by Living Hope International Ministries. Our editor, Seneca Harbin. Say hi, Seneca. Sitting down here. This is a book of personal stories from, many of the authors are here at the conference. We have my friend Bill Schlegel, Will Barlow, Johnny Barnes, Suzanne Lakin, who's presenting, my beautiful wife, Candace, and others. So you'll hear more about that in an upcoming session, but I just wanted to highlight that. Some people are like me, they're nerds. They want to hear about theology and Bible and history and how is this coherent. And a lot of other people want to hear, what is your story? How did you come to these views? What kind of price did you pay? And this is a lot of what you get in this book. So people have asked me, how are you doing? How are you feeling lately, Dale? This is how I feel. I'm holding on with white knuckles to this thing, which now is putting on conferences all over God's creation. And I don't know where it's going to go next, but it's really amazing. And I really feel blessed to be a part of this. And I really feel like it's a God thing, and it's picking up steam, and it's going to change things for the better. And I'm really blessed to have you all on the journey with me and at this conference tonight. So thank you.